Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate SNS. I hope you've been having a great week. So we have Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. Now, usually we'll try to focus on eating more actual good food than junk food, but this year I'm going to do something different. I'm going to switch it up because I weighed myself today and I'm about 8 pounds lighter than what I like to be. So you might be thinking, well, you're kind of fat, dude. And I was like, hey, it is what it is. I like to be at a certain weight. So I've got about 8 pounds of room to work with. So the pies better be watching out. The cookies better be watching out because I'm coming for it, man. That's going to be my focal point tomorrow. But other news. So when we're looking at what's happening in 2023 and why are we looking that far ahead? Hey man, that's only like a month away. So we need to kind of see what's happening. Well, we know about the fertilizer shortages. We know about the food scarcity that's happening right now. I know there's a lot of people out there who live in this land of make believe where everything's still fine, but we're actually seeing where you're getting these reports right here that there's going the food scarcity is going to get worse. There's going to be severe starvation across the world. They're expecting it here in this country as well. We showed in another video where they were talking about the blackouts and things like that's going to be happening over the winter time. They're saying about a quarter of the United States population is going to be without power, and a lot of that is because of the fuel shortage. Sorry, not the food shortage, the fuel shortage on that. And a lot of people have this tendency to say, okay, we're getting away from fossil fuels. We're going to windmills. We're going to focus on doing solar and things like that. But guess what? In the West, in the wintertime, it's not feasible, man. There's not enough hours in the day, not enough sunlight in the day to power those cities. So what do? They go to these restrictions and they start shutting the grid down at certain times periodically to conserve electricity, to conserve energy. And if you are in the elder generations and things like that, you already can't afford that fuel source when you're living on those Social Security incomes. Something you need to be aware of. Not everybody is able to work, and a lot of people are like, well, $5 a gallon, yeah, it sucks, but I work a couple extra hours of overtime. Hey man, if you want to do that, you go for it. But with the food scarcity coming up, man, you might be wondering, what can I do to better help? Help my family to be prepared today because it's already getting harder to grocery shop just for the week or the month without trying to prep ahead. So what I would encourage you to do is look at those preps that stretch the furthest that don't cost as much. And that's going to be a lot of your dry storage items. Now, what did they do back in the 20s? What did they do in the late 1800s? Well, they focused on storing dry beans, dry grains, dry corns, and things like that. Well, corn is technically a grain as well, so we could have left that one in just grains, but a lot of people don't realize it is actually a grain. But you can make your flours, cornmeal with corn. You can make your flour and things like that with wheat. You can make whole grain flour as well. There's a lot of options out there. Millet, you can use that to make bread and stuff like that, and it's actually cheaper to buy that where it's not processed already. Okay, so you can buy like a 50-pound bag of millet seed that is actually going to be able to make you quite a bit of bread. Now, is it as great as the bread in the store? I think it has a better flavor to it, but it doesn't have the same consistency. It's not going to be as soft and as pliable as, say, like Wonder Bread or Sara Lee butter bread or Autumn Grains butter bread. And notice I eat a lot of butter bread. That's just the way I am, man. I love the flavor of it. People are like, well, you shouldn't eat so much butter, man. Well, I like to add butter to my butter bread to the point that when I throw it in the pan, I don't like using toasters. To me, they're kind of a waste. I will take it. I'll butter both sides of that piece of bread and throw it in there, and then you have that nice buttery flavored butter bread. So it's pretty good stuff in the morning. Like, oh well, that's going to stop your heart. You're not going to live forever anyway. May as well die happy. But you want to make sure that you're buying food. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so there's a dairy shortage that's being reported right now. What are we going to do with that? So, well, around here, when you start looking at butter shortages, whether it's the dairy variety or the vegetable oil variety, they're reporting both of those right now. Understand that has to do with part of it a big part of it has to do with the grain that's not being produced because one, we didn't have the fertilizers available this year that we had last time. You might be wondering, okay, well, I'm doing a garden next year. How do I make sure I have enough fertilizer? Well, right now is actually the best time to buy it because it's dropped in price by like 50%. They slashed those prices to try and get you to buy it so they can clear room for all that Christmas stuff that they started throwing on the shelf the day after Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving, but Halloween now. And even actually, it was about a week before Halloween even started. I remember going in the store and I'm like, really? We have Christmas already? I mean, that doesn't make sense, but it's a big market gimmick, man. So what can you do? Well, I would be focusing in on getting your fertilizers and stuff now. And how much fertilizer do you need? Well, that's going to depend on the size garden that you're planning to do. Most people do not keep an acre garden. Most people will do a 20 by 30 area or less, or maybe a little more. But typically, a 50-pound bag is going to carry you through the year. So get you a 50-pound bag. You might be thinking, okay, well, I want to prep ahead of time because I don't want to wait to see if the fertilizer issue resolves next year, which I don't think it will. Because you got to understand a few things. The reason I'm saying it probably won't, because even if that war in Ukraine ends tomorrow, it's going to take a year or two for them to rebuild the infrastructure for it and get those processes started back up again and all that kind of mess. And then it's going to hit the market, and of course your farmers and stuff are going to be buying it first, and then you're going to be trying to get your hands on it. And the price is going to be up because the availability is still kind of small, but the demand is really high, so those prices are going to be going crazy. So stock up what you can now. You can get a bag of 10 10 10 over at the store for a garden. Now, I understand it's not the same as yard fertilizer. You can get that over at the store, and it costs about between 15 to 20 bucks for a 50-pound bag. So I would recommend doing that. And that's going to fertilize your areas and stuff. I usually will fertilize that in real good before I till, let it settle. Then when you till everything in, it usually settles deep in the soil. So as your plants are growing, it's not too hot at the top, but as the roots grow down, there's plenty of nutrients down there. And you have to do that down here in this area with this real sandy type of soil. Now, if you're living in the northern states, you're going to have to figure out the best way to do it because I don't live up north. I never have. I've lived in the Midwest before. I've lived out west before in Oregon. It's not one of those areas where, I've done a lot of gardening. I've done some in Indiana in the past, and usually the soil was pretty good, at least in the area where I was at. And you didn't really have to amend it with much of anything. But down here in Florida, we have this sand, and it does not hold nutrients very good at all. So you're constantly adding dry matter. Now, what are we talking about? Dry matter, you're adding composted leaves, you're adding the straws and stuff like that to help build that soil up. As it decays, it's got that plant matter in there, and it also helps to hold the nutrients in the soil so it doesn't just leach down into the ground. Something you need to think of. Don't go out also, if you have a sandy type soil, do not go out and start hitting your yard with phosphorus real heavy because you can actually contaminate the groundwater. If you have a well, you're drinking, that water in that water table, and you can actually contaminate that phosphorus poisoning. So be careful with what you're doing, guys. When we look at what's happening around the world today, and you start looking at this woke generation, you're going, man, where are people coming up with this stuff? They're learning it in college, man. That's what it is. Where it used to be a higher education, you learn a good trade, or you go in business degrees, computer sciences and things like that. That's not the focus is anymore. The focus now is to get you on the side of the people who don't want to do anything. You're living at home in their mama's basement complaining about, oh, I can't buy a house because I can't get a job. Well, you're not going to get a job with a Bachelor of Arts degree. I don't even know what that thing's good for anymore. But everyone that I know that's had one ends up working in some kind of customer service work, and it's done them no good. And they go, well, I have a bachelor's degree and you know this garbage, and it's like, well, what does it do? And they can never really tell you what it's for. But if you know what it's for, definitely comment in and let me know what that's for. I also want to give an update on our chickens while we're here. So apparently we have some sort of a creature of either the four leg, my guess is actually the two leg variety, that likes to come out and mess with people's stuff. And the reason I say that is because I've been noticing that there is one person in the area that has a tendency to cruise around 2:30, 3 o'clock at night when everyone is asleep, or they think everyone is asleep, riding around with their little four wheeler, just kind of idling down through there and coasting down hills, shining spotlights to see what they can steal. And I noticed the other day, about a week ago, they were kind of really focusing in on where the chickens were up front. So I was moving them the other day to the back, and they happened to see me moving them. Well, I went out today. I always do a head count in the morning and a head count in the evening to make sure my birds are there. And I'm missing some chicks, some of those that we hatched out. Now, they are too large for a snake to have eaten. If a snake got in and ate them, there's no way that snake is getting out of the pen, and it is not in that grow out pen. So, looked around. There's no way that a predator is dug in. There's no dig marks. There is no tampering with the locks that you can make out like an animal if it had done. It's not going to relock it when it's done. Understand that. There's all kinds of different signs that you can see when it's an animal, but birds do not just poof, vanish. It just doesn't happen, but it happened last night. So, trying to figure out, okay, what the heck? Well, why would they not go for my adult birds? We have a rooster, and he is aggressive toward anybody other than me. I don't really like to go in a pen with him too much because I've had some dealing. And for a black copper brand, now I understand he's nowhere near as bad as that Americana was. That's why he turned into stew meat. But that black copper Moran, he started off really sweet, but he protects his hens, and I respect that. But you have to kind of keep an eye on him. You don't want to, turn your back on him because he'll try to nail you with them spurs, man. And I don't trim his spurs unless they get to a point where it's going to affect his walk or his stride. Then I will, but as of right now, that's not happening. But uh, people do not go back there and mess around with the adult birds because them hens and stuff, because he will nail you quick, and no one wants to get spurred by a rooster. So that's why I think that they went toward the young ones. Now they end up getting two young chicks. Okay, now when we say young, they're not 3 or 4 weeks, they're not 6 weeks, they're not 8 weeks. We're talking 10 weeks old, and they're just gone. Gone. So I'm back there and I'm counting this morning. I'm like, okay, we're missing two. What the heck? And I checked everything you could possibly check. Nothing has tampered with it as far as a four-legged variety. The only thing I can figure is a two-legged variety. If something came in and grabbed a couple chicks, jokes on them, because they got two roosters. They got two young cockerels. They did not grab the hens. They didn't get the pullets. So, hey man, jokes on them. I'm not too worried about it. It is what it is. But it is a little disappointing. So what can you do to prevent that from happening in the future? Well, you can put up your security cameras and things like that. But that's just going to show you after the fact who it is, what it is. So we're going to install those. But something else that you want to do is you want to make sure that you can get some sort of a screw. And you can go over to a hardware store and you want to ask them specifically for a security screw. And they're going to bring you some out. They usually have a hexagonal head, or they will have the Torx head on there. And in the center, it has a stud that comes up, and it takes a certain bit. It's not a universal bit. It's going to fit other ones. It is a certain bit for that screw to remove it. So I put those in the box. That way we don't have to worry about that in the future. We got some of those up with the quail as well, because back probably a year ago or so, we had some quail go missing. It's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. It's quail just vanish, what the heck? So we just latch everything up with that. There are no latches on my boxes at all. Everything is security screws, and you have to go out with a drill every morning to be able to get into your pen to collect your eggs, to collect your feed them, water them, and all that kind of stuff, clean the area out and all that. And it can be a bit of a, just an extra step you got to add in there. It's not always fun, but it protects your birds. So that's what I'm doing with the chickens now. We went and got all that secured. But like I said, no four-legged variety of animal had been messing around out there from what I can tell. So my guess is somebody just come out there and got some. So, and hey, if they needed it that bad, then just have the mentality, bless them with it. Make sure they can't steal from you again. I would rather, if someone is in need, to ask rather than thieve. That's just the way that I am with stuff. But we've got that stuff pretty well secured anyway. So I know it wasn't an animal based off of dealing with pests in the past. We don't post on here a lot when we deal with pest, raccoons and possum and things like that. And we put a post up one time earlier in the year. We had a possum get into the large coop. Rooster had him cornered, man. He wasn't going anywhere. He was not messing with them hens. And 357 took care of that real quick. Like, well, that's kind of a large caliber handgun to be using on a possum, but you want to make it quick. You want to get it dealt with. And then there's the people like, oh, well, he's not going to hurt anything. Well, no, he's going to rob your eggs. And if they're hungry enough and large enough, they will kill your chickens. So then I guess it's been about 3 weeks, maybe a month ago, we ended up with an issue where a possum had gotten into our up front pen in the garden area where we were feeding those chickens and keeping them free grazing to eat the weeds and manure on our garden area and all that stuff for spring. And a possum had gotten in there and just happened to be coming out. It's like, hey, there's a possum in there. So I went out and used a 45 that time. I like to switch it up, keep things guessing, and dealt with that issue as well. And he was actually after the chicks when I went out there. He was trying to get in the box, but I closed the door at night, and he was doing everything he can to open that box door to get in there to them birds. So yes, they will eat chicks. They will even eat an adult bird if they're large enough. There's this misconception that they're just cute animal. Understand, it is a giant meat-eating rat. That's what a possum is. I don't know why everybody is trying to come up with this mentality of, oh, they're just this really cute little fuzzy animal and everybody should have one as a pet. It's a rat, man. Get rid of it. But there are people who keep mice and rats as pets, and if that's your thing, go for it. I don't understand it. If you like snakes as pets, go for it. I don't understand it. I deal with snakes the same way that I deal with rats, as not in the same method, but I deal with them the same way. we usually use a hoe or an axe or a shovel or whatever I have handy at the time, So that's typically the way I deal with snakes and stuff. I don't put up with varmints getting into my coops and stuff. If they get in there once, they're going to continue to come in and continue to mess with your stuff until you deal with them. You cannot relocate them. You put them in a cage, take them 10 miles out, drop them off somewhere. He's going to come back. He's going to find his way back. Understand, they're not just like, oh, he was born in this little area and that's the only area he knows. No, they range. They have a large range. So you got to deal with it, and you have to make sure it's a permanent fix. So, but I hope you're having a wonderful week, guys. I hope you're ready for Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I hope that yours is going to be as blessed as I know mine will be. But the main thing to be focusing on right now, outside of stuff, is try to get prepared. Try to make sure that you have preparations for planting your gardens next year, and we will be doing more videos on that as well in the future, obviously, because spring's coming up, so we got a lot of stuff to get prepared for. And that's the thing about homesteading, guys, is it can be done. It's not going to be a part-time gig with just an hour a week or 30 minutes a day. It is something you have to continue to focus on, continually improving your situation, continually checking your pens to make sure the animals aren't getting taken, whether it's from the two-legged or four-legged variety of critters, because they both will do what they need to do. And you need to understand this as well. With times the way that they are, people will find out that you have birds. People will find out that you're raising cattle, that you're raising sheep, that you're raising whatever, whatever the case is. When people get hungry enough, they're going to do what they have to do. It's up to you. Do you feel that it's better to just bless them with it and try to prevent theft in the future, which is the way I look at it, or do you then want to take an aggressive stance on it? And that's for you to decide. I know how I deal with it when it comes to the four-legged pest varieties and the snakes. I deal with it in an aggressive way. When it comes to, if someone is that bad off that they need food, then I'm going to secure things up the best way that I can. That way it takes them a little longer, and it's not as, they're going to be noisy about it, so you're going to know they're back there. And you can deal with it that way with the legal system. But what you don't want to do is go require someone's life on something like that. That's where I stand on it anyway. If I have an abundance for me and mine and somebody is in need, I'll try to help them out. But one thing I don't tolerate is theft. And that's what we have a legal system for. But that's something that you have to make that decision for yourself. But again, man, get food, buy as much as you can. I've been stocking up on dry bean varieties, man. We did this. Oh, it's been couple years ago, we really started stocking up on some of that. So I'm trying to rotate out some old stocks and restock with new stuff. I bought the 1 pound bags, which was kind of nice, and then separated those into portions and stuff. But what I'm doing now is I'm just buying those 5 and 8 pound variety packs where you have, a single type or a mixed type and things like that. It's cheaper that way. You can get that 8 pound bag and it runs you about $5. That's not bad. I mean, that is not bad at all. So we've been doing pintos and stuff, and you might be thinking, well, you want something to go along with that. Well, something else I've done is, as you see the meat prices going up, rather than buying the packs of lunch meat stuff, I just go out and buy a whole ham. I've been finding some really good deals on that. When you find those deals, freeze that stuff because, hey, guess what? It's going to keep. Now, it ain't going to keep for years, but it's going to keep a lot longer than that little pack of ham that you buy in the store, the little package of, pork, chopped pork, or, the hog jowls and things like that that you get to throw in your stews. And you can cut that up, cube it up and all that, throw it in with the beans and add some extra flavor because, one, it's been smoked. And then the flavoring that you put in, I use a lot of Cajun seasonings. I like a little bit of spice, but I also don't want it too hot. So I kind of monitor how much is in there, and then it adds some of that extra flavor to the meat, just like the meat adds flavor to those beans, and it makes really good meals and stuff. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't just eat beans all the time. Well, no, you can add your mashed potatoes, you can add your baked potatoes, you can add whatever you want to add to it. But if you add beans to your diet and you eat a half a cup of beans, now it's not much, a half cup of beans every day, you're going to see your health improve. You're going to see your blood pressure start to drop. You're going to start to see those LDL levels in your cholesterol settle in. You're going to get your good cholesterol up. You're going to bring your bad cholesterol down. You're going to start better regulating your sugars and things like that. So these are some of the health benefits when we really started focusing on this and changing the way that we eat, because I don't want there to be too much of a shell shock. If you're eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of boxed foods and things like that, when things go bad, and you switch from that, you're going to have some withdrawal effects and stuff from that garbage that's in there, plus the negative health effects. So I want to make sure that we're adjusting our diets now to something that's maintainable and sustainable, and also having, the options to be like, okay, so we eat like this anyway. It's not a real big change. So one of the things I wish we had down here were a lot more squirrel. We had Hurricane Michael back in 2018 that wiped out, most of our oak trees and stuff like that. So we don't really have any squirrel population out here anymore. Might be thinking, well, I don't want to eat no tree rats, but they're actually pretty good. You want to make sure that you skin them out. You do not want to have squirrel fur floating around in your stews. As a child, it's something that I can remember. Grandpa had made some squirrel and dumplings, and there was more squirrel hair than there were dumplings or squirrel meat, and it was pretty gross. So don't be adding fur to your food there. You want to make sure you clean that stuff up. But I hope you've had a great day. We're gonna hop off here.